Here is the amount of mental illness on one side. Here is the amount of mental illnesses on the other side. I know this is shocking. Did you know that your political beliefs could be a window into your mental well-being? Statistics reveal that one side of the political aisle is struggling with psychological distress and mental illness at an alarming rate more than the other. But which side is it? Is it the left or is it the right? And what does this ideological divide mean for you, your loved ones, and the future of our society? The answer may surprise you and forever change the way you look at politics. Stay tuned and I will reveal the preeminent truth. Listen, first off, these startling findings come from the groundbreaking new book authored by me. I will reveal the book at the end that explains all of this in depth. Don't worry, it draws on over 500 scientific references and my own extensive experience working with highly disaffected individuals. I offer a provocative and deeply researched exploration of the psychological divide between liberals and conservatives. It's like none other book that has ever been published. So before we dive into this shocking conclusion that you're here for, let's take a closer look at the data. Multiple studies for many years have looked at the rates of mental illness across the political spectrum. They found that one group had a shocking 300% higher rate of depression compared to its political counterpart. Can you guess which side this is? You're right. Those that are left-leaning struggle with depression at 3 times the rate of those on the right. Not only was depression 300% higher, but also anxiety, PTSD were all over 200% higher as well. In some situations, stress was over 400% higher, like the data studies done in 2020. Overall, mental health was 2 to 300% higher amongst the left. But why? Well, we'll get into that why, but the story doesn't end there. The researchers dug deep and made an even more shocking discovery. They found that the further left someone was on the political spectrum, the higher their rates of mental illness. It wasn't gradual climbs, but it was exponential climbs. So, in other words, the most liberal individual struggled with the highest levels of psychological distress. Just how much higher were the rates compared to the moderates or conservative? The answer may shock you. Imagine a staircase with each step representing a point further on the left of the political spectrum. Now picture water slowly flooding the staircase, with the water level rising higher and higher with each step. That's the alarming trend researchers found with mental illness rate as people moved further and further left. The most liberal individuals were drowning in psychological distress, staggering rates 30 to 70+% higher than their more moderate peers. This means that if a genuine conservative had a psychological distress rate of 2 on a scale from 1 to 10, it was likely that the progressive liberal had a psychological distress rate as high as 8 on that same scale. But what's behind this disturbing trend? The key may lie in certain personality traits that tend to cluster on the left. Research is revealing that certain personality traits are strongly linked to left-wing political views. And these same traits may also put individuals at higher risk for mental illness. While all the big 5 personality traits were studied, of course, 2 traits in particular stand out: high openness and high neuroticism. People with openness tend to be creative, curious, and unconventional. All admirable qualities, of course, but they may also be more prone to irrational fantasies, be emotional, unstable, and impulsiveness, and also less practical thinking. Research finds that all of these things actually correlate with lower cognitive abilities. So if we combine that with high neuroticism, which is a tendency towards anxiety, depression, and emotional volatility, and you have a psychological perfect storm for bad behavior and irrationality. There are some underlying reasons for this discrepancy, like higher rates of self-victimization and feelings of worthlessness. Imagine 2 students who both struggle on a test. The first student thinks, I'm a failure. I'll never amount to anything. The second student thinks, that's tough, but if I study harder, next time I can improve. Which mindset do you think is more common on the left? Research suggests it's the first one, and this learned helplessness is a major risk for factors for depression. Other problems are difficulty coping with merit-based situations and rationalizing the structures of capitalism capitalist societies amongst those on the left. Imagine two entrepreneurs now, both starting their own businesses. The first entrepreneur believes they will get what they earn and deserve. He knows that starting a business is risky, but he believes that with hard work, innovation, and a bit of luck, he can succeed. If he fails, he'll learn from this mistake and try again. The second entrepreneur also starts a business, but deep down, he believes the system is rigged against him. He sees successful businesses as evidence of greed and exploitation, not hard work and innovation like the other guy. When he encounters setbacks, he feels victimized by the capitalist system as rigged and systemically racist. Instead of adapting, he becomes resentful and discouraged. He believes governments should do more to make results more equality-based for everyone. Well, which entrepreneur do you think is more likely to succeed in the long run, or at all for that matter? Research suggests it's the first one. Which one do you think is more likely to be liberal? Yes, it's the second one. This is where the political, psychological divide between the left and right can have real world consequences. As we've seen, the psychological divide between left and right is real, it's deep, and it's consequential. But what does this mean for you, for our society, and the future of political discourse? The answer is both profound and sobering. When you engage in political discussions with someone who is left-leaning, there's a good chance you're not just dealing with a difference of opinions or values. You may actually be encountering a worldview probably shaped by deep-rooted psychological distress, cognitive distortions, and maladaptive coping mechanisms that the person has. Imagine trying to have a rational, good faith debate with someone who generally believes the world is ending, who feels personally victimized by the very system you're trying to discuss, and whose personality is defined by anxious, emotionally volatile, and a sense of helplessness. It's like trying to play chess with someone who thinks the pieces are actually out to destroy them. Every liberal isn't mentally ill, and every conservative isn't perfectly healthy, but it does not mean that when you encounter certain beliefs, like the ideas that the near future is bleak, that individuals are powerless because of systemic oppression, or that success in a capitalist society is nothing more than greed and exploitation, there's a guarantee that there is more than just political differences at play. In fact, as you know, research suggests that having just 3 key psychological factors like these are alarming factors that are more exclusively within left-leaning people and more common on the far left. So with this knowledge, it can help you move forward in the world where political differences may be rooted in deep psychological distress. So the next time you have a political conversation, it will allow you to understand that this person who believes these types of things, they are not coming from an objective or a good faith-based perspective, but they're coming from deep-rooted, internalized difficulties and problems. And these problems that a person has is intrinsic to themselves. And political conversations allow these individual problems that a person has to show itself easily within these topics of discussion. And since we know, you know, this is a predominantly left-leaning phenomenon by now, by understanding the link between mental health and political ideology, we can approach political discussions more appropriately. Listen, episode 30 of my podcast reveals all of this info in depth as I have a conversation with Ron Wilkes. I dive into my new book, Leftism, which is in the link below. It goes incredibly deep on this topic that we just talked about. Not only will you gain deep understanding of the psychological roots of our political landscape, you'll also discover practical strategies for navigating these challenging conversations. So here is the podcast I was telling you about right here. Click the link.